So this is a video that I've been going back and forth with myself about whether or not to make it for the past probably month, I guess, ever since the Vox Dei fiasco from a few weeks ago. And this is going to be called The State of ComicsGate and how I see it and how I think the movement is doing. And the answer is, it's not good. And you may be a little bit confused by that. You may think, well, wait a minute, we're getting all these projects funded, we're building a community. How could it possibly be doing poorly? Well, the problem is that in terms of the bigger picture, and this is a question I've been asking for quite a while, and has not really gotten any good answers. The bigger picture question is, what exactly are we doing here? What exactly is ComicGate about? What is ComicGate for? What are the people who have said that they are part of ComicGate? What do they actually want? And this video was prompted by this Twitter thread that you're seeing on the screen right here, which was started by science fiction author John Delarose. And John Delarose was the person who first gave ComicGate any kind of media exposure in The Federalist and PJ Media, both of which are right-wing sources. It was him doing pieces, and also Megan Fox. No, not that Megan Fox, the pundit Megan Fox. Both did pieces about ComicGate in these avowedly right-wing websites. And John Delarose was talking a few days ago, as you can see, this was the 24th of September, about how basically ComicGate was always supposed to be about increasing right-wing representation. Now, the thing about ComicGate, as far as I'm concerned, what it has always been was it was a hashtag movement that coalesced around a widespread dissatisfaction with American superhero comics. And so that's what ComicGate is to me. It's just simply, it's based on grievance, and it's based on a widespread dissatisfaction with the product that these major media corporations are putting out. However, after a while, you have to translate that grievance to doing something. And so now that there's actual money involved in ComicGate, that it's not just YouTube revenue, but there's actual no BS money, the question is, where exactly are we going with it? And I don't feel like that we collectively have made the right decisions in regard to that. Obviously, it's not my money, it's not my endeavor, it's not my reputation that's on the line. I'm just a small-time anonymous YouTuber, so my opinion isn't worth a whole lot in terms of Monday morning quarterbacking the stuff, but I think that there are a lot of people that feel the same dissatisfaction with, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the community, the hashtag, the movement, whatever. John Delarose here, like I said, was the first person to give ComicGate any kind of media attention. He's been at this since the beginning. So a few weeks ago, when Vox Dei tried to start his ComicGate Comics imprint for his Archaven Comics company, John Delarose went to bat for Vox, at least against some of the more outrageous things that were being said about him. As for what I feel about Vox Dei, I have defended not only the idea of alt hero, I have defended also the work itself in at least one video. But because John Delarose went to bat for Vox Dei, who, by the way, is paying John Delarose to do several projects for Archaven and for Vox Dei's larger publishing company, Castalia House. So Vox Dei goes to bat for his friend and boss, and a whole bunch of people came down against him. Some people saying that he's not, or John isn't really ComicGate, he's just a drama whore or something like that. It's like, I know, we don't all have to like each other. We shouldn't have to submit to this groupthink idea where we all seek approval from each other. So, if you don't like John, you don't like John. But to say that he isn't ComicGate because he was defending his boss, that's really shitty. And there was a lot of people, none of the people in this thread, at least not that I'm aware of. So I don't want to call these people out. But there were other people, especially ones that are really big Ethan Van Sciver fans, used the opportunity to not only denounce Vox Dei, but to denounce anyone that might even think of defending Vox Dei. The fact that Ethan Van Sciver and a lot of the people that were really big fans of Ethan Van Sciver, people that live streamed with him and such, basically used Vox Dei trying to take take his part of ComicGate they basically used it to co-opt the movement. ComicGate, the name, I don't know if he, supposedly Ethan Van Sciver was going to trademark it. I don't know if he's actually gone through with that or not. But at one point, he was going to trademark it. So it may well literally belong to him at this point. And even if it doesn't literally belong to him, it's now pretty clear that in order to be, ComicGate, in order to be considered part of ComicGate, you basically have to be tight with Ethan Van Sciver in that circle. It's not that I dislike Ethan Van Sciver. It's not that I don't wish him success. I'm going to support, the projects that he's doing going forward. It's not like I suddenly hate him or something, but this attempt that so many people are doing to basically start fights with each other, that's not a good sign. It's not a good sign for the movement. It's not a good sign for what we're doing overall. And then we get John's point here, which is that for John, at least, it was always about... Basically, ComicEight was always a right-wing movement, and I've always been firmly against that idea. I do think that increasing right-wing representation of views in media is a net positive, but I don't think that that's what ComicEight was ever about. However, John raises an interesting point here. So one thing about SJWs, it's easy to talk about how sort of emotional they are and how histrionic and borderline a lot of them are. But what it's very easy to miss is how pragmatic they are. And that may sound kind of weird, but SJWs are very good at picking fairly easy targets and setting very achievable goals for themselves. Like, you think about Marvel Comics, and you think about, say, the way they, female characters. They say they want more representation of female characters, by which they mean both the characters themselves and also writers in the background. Now, you can say that representation isn't really a net positive, that it really shouldn't matter as long as the product is good, but from Marvel's point of view, they're going to think that, well, we're pushing out 90 books per month. We've got all of these female characters that, frankly, could stand to get more exposure. What exactly is the harm in letting... bringing a female writer on board and having her write a female character that doesn't get a lot of exposure? And if it works, then it works. And if it doesn't work, well, then, that sucks. But hey, at least we tried. At least we can say that we tried to increase representation. So from Marvel's point of view, they're not really losing a lot by increasing female representation. And the fact that this is actually just a Trojan horse in order to get progressive politics more firmly entrenched in Marvel in the background, that doesn't really start to become apparent until much later. You would think that after the utter failure of Mockingbird, which was canceled for low sales apparently after issue 3, and the fact that the readership of Marvel roundly rejected Chelsea Cain's not only take on the character, but just her entire writing style in general, you would think that would tell Marvel, okay, we can't do this again. But instead, they kept doubling down on that over and over again. And that version of Mockingbird is still canon to this day. So you take a fairly soft target, which is increased female representation, which doesn't really sound that bad, and it's not until later that it becomes apparent that it was a Trojan horse. But that's what SJWs are really good at, though. They're pretty good at setting achievable goals and then taking it further from there. And we've seen this a whole bunch of times in various other things, but it's pretty apparent in Marvel as well, and the decisions they've made over the past couple of years. So if ComicGate had been about this, if it had been to increase political diversity, or whatever you want to call it, at Marvel, that's a pretty easy goal to make a case for. Every single creative at Marvel that is political is very, very left-wing. They're hiring people like Ta-Nehisi Coates, who was Obama's biggest fanboy during the Obama administration, to write Black Panther. It's fairly easy to make a case that if they were to have even a single right-wing person, openly right-wing person, writing a character that was an open Trump supporter, hell, I could, right off the top of my head, what if you've got Ta-Nehisi Coates? What if you went for somebody like Andrew Klavan, who is a Hollywood screenwriter and is a political commentator, and you had him write some third string Avenger that nobody nobody really cares about, but you give him a series and it either works or it doesn't. But then at least Marvel could have said that they had increased right-wing representation. It wouldn't have really cost them a whole lot. So it would have been an achievable goal. But ComicEight made it very clear from the beginning that that's not what we collectively wanted. Diversity in Comics has flat out said that he doesn't want political comics, and most of us have either agreed with him or followed his lead on that one. I think they have their place, personally, because when you have it's not, because, I mean, if you were to say that you didn't want any political comic ever, that eliminates a lot of really big storylines from comics history. And it also means that publishers like Black Mask, which only publishes basically very far left stories, you basically want them to go out of business. It's like, it's not, political comics are not themselves the problem. It's putting it where it doesn't belong. It's using it as kind of a Trojan horse sort of thing. Okay, so we don't want right-wing comics, we want non-political comics. Okay, well, how do you go about achieving that? Well, unfortunately, Diversity in Comics probably went about that in the most stupid way possible, because just the constant personal attacks on various creators in the comic industry have basically ensured that our criticisms of them are never going to be taken seriously by the Marvel establishment. We're not big enough to do that. And you may think, like, Diversity in Comics is trying to push this meme that we're, like, 200,000 people or something, but the problem is that you see things like Silencer, which is probably the biggest move the needle book there is, the biggest book that he's pushing, and he's right to. I mean, this is actually legitimately probably the best ongoing series that that DC is doing right now, and it's only selling 11,000. So why is that not a lot higher if we're as big as we think we are? When Diversity in Comics became big, what I always assumed that the goal was, to the extent that there was a goal, because I admit that, yeah, a lot of this is just done by the seat of your pants, I always thought that the goal was to create a parallel fandom. I mean, I don't have any particular love for comics professionals. I don't particularly care that they felt attacked or harassed. I don't know these people personally. Even if I did, I probably wouldn't like them, just based on what I've seen of their Twitter. So it's not that I think that, oh gosh, think of the poor comics pros that have been harassed. No, I don't care. Like, literally, if they all fell off the face of the earth tomorrow, there's only a handful of them that I think was a real loss. But it's like, once again, it's just a matter of sheer strategy and tactics and what is the ultimate goal. If the ultimate goal was just to criticize Marvel and make fun of it, well, we've done that plenty. If the goal was to try to get Marvel to listen to us, well, that really wasn't going to happen. Not seriously. And if the goal is to basically make our own parallel comics fandom / industry based on internet reach and based on crowdfunding and based on viral marketing, which is where I think we're at now, I think that we're going about this all wrong, to be quite honest. So most of these projects are on Indiegogo. I still have to back this, but I'm waiting for next week. So here we get Doug TenNapel, the creator of Earthworm Jim, which I actually did not watch growing up, and I'm not even sure I knew it was a thing. But I guess Doug TenNapel, to people that are just a little bit older than me, is like a big deal. That's $100,000. I think this campaign just ended. So $100,000, it's not bad. Just shy of 2,000 backers. But the thing is, you gotta remember, this number is before anything has actually been shipped or printed, which costs a lot of money. And I was watching one of Doug TenNapel's live streams a little bit ago, and he kind of mentioned that it's like the actual getting the books out there is pretty expensive. But the problem is that for all of the projects that aren't Ethan Van Sciver's or Richard Myers, a lot of them are not doing as well as they could. John Malin deliberately burned every bridge he had in the comic industry in order to do his own thing, basically. So I would hope that ComicSgate would rally around some guy like that, some guy that really did kind of go to bat for us within the industry. And it's like 75,000. It's okay. It's still got 4 days left, so maybe that'll ramp up in the last couple of days. But I mean, Jawbreakers did 300,000, and it has less of a pedigree than this does. I mean, it's the same artist. It's a writer who I can't remember the writer's name, honestly, but a writer that's has a much better proven track record than Richard Meyer does, and it's raised 75,000, which is, like I said, not bad. But there's no reason that this isn't six figures, and it kind of only gets worse from there. John De La Rose, like I said, arguably the guy that gave ComicEight its first media exposure. This is 30,000. Could be better. Could be a lot worse, but it could be better. Lady Alchemy by Martina Marcota, another person that gave ComicEight some early positive exposure on Rebel Media. Once again, right, 15,000. Still got, this one was a 2-month campaign, so it's still got some time. And then we got Brutus here. Brutus the Badass, 12,000. Donald DeLay, this is another guy that he burned a lot of bridges in the comics industry itself in order to, join ComicEight and free himself, I guess. And in order, so that he didn't have to, once he saw just how insular and cliquish the comics industry really was, that they could not tolerate dissenting opinions, that's when he basically left. And, this one's still got quite a bit of time left, almost 3 weeks, but there's no reason that this one shouldn't be tracking for six figures. I don't know what the expectation for this is by the end of it, but there's no reason that they shouldn't have a lot more backers. And this is the kind of thing that gets people on your side, is when they see that there's money involved with this. And if there's diminishing returns for every single pro that is openly supportive of ComicEight, I don't really see why any of them would do that. And then finally, we have an indie comic, Sporkman. I've talked about the original Sporkman on my channel. These guys are, in the trenches. They're hacking it out every day. They've got a YouTube channel. They're doing live streams with people. And this has been out a couple weeks now, and it's only up to 1,400, less than that, by 36 backers. And there's no reason for that. And part of it just may be that it's just a matter of social media outreach, but this really ought to be the thing that we're supporting each other, because otherwise, what's the point? So once again, we come back to what exactly is ComicEight doing? Is it a way to, is it a mechanism by which crowdfunded comics are supported? Well, does that really work though? Because every one of those books is it's like a 6-month turnaround that may not even come about, right? That's always the issue with social media, is that you don't actually know if you're going to get what you paid for. You don't know if you're going to get anything, much less what you paid for. And there is one anti-SJW publishing house that is regularly putting out content, and that is the hated Vox Dei with his Archaven Comics imprint. If you want comics that are specifically designed to take on the SJW mentality, then Archaven Comics has a whole bunch of stuff already out that you can buy right now that doesn't have to be crowdfunded. You've got stuff written by Chuck Dixon. You've got the adaptation of Quantum Mortis, Right Ho Jeeves, another Chuck Dixon thing. So yeah, Archaven is its own publishing house with comics that are out right now, instead of paying $25 plus shipping and handling for a comic that's coming out 6 months from now. So a lot of people have suggested to Ethan Van Sciver that that everybody involved with this ComicEight thing should start a single publishing house there. And I realize that a lot of this is still in the early stages, but right now Vox Dei has delivered on his Kickstarter pretty well, and so far none of the supposedly ComicEight creators have yet. I know Iron Sights is going out right now, so that's something. Stardust by Nasser Rabidi, that's going out. So we've got a couple that are going out finally, but this is kind of the problem, right? Is that the only person that has put out a product that is specifically designed to counter SJWs in comics is the guy that nobody likes and is radioactive to most professionals. But Vox Dei does know what he's doing. He is a full-time publisher. He's done a lot of this stuff before, and right now he's got his act together, and ComicSgate really doesn't. We don't have a product that we can show people, see, this is what we want. We are really, really abrasive to other fans and pros in the industry, so we can't really say that we're like the nice guys, because as you can see what happened to John De La Rose here, even when you're supposedly on our side, if you step out of line, if you go against the groupthink, it opens you up to attack. What purpose does ComicSgate serve, and what purpose does it serve for somebody on the outside to join ComicSgate? Because they're probably not going to get as much money out of it as Ethan Van Sciver or Richard Meyer did. They're not going to get the respect of their peers. They may not even get the respect from people in ComicSgate. And so what exact purpose does it serve to even use that hashtag anymore? And I've always talked about how I hate that name. I always assumed that a better name would organically come along, and it really hasn't. And now it's sort of the name we're stuck with, and I hate it. Yeah, it's a tough position that people find themselves in terms of like what to do going forward. If we had a boycott going from the beginning, I think that would have worked. But Diversity Comics always made it clear that he didn't want a boycott, and people basically followed suit on that. There's really no point in trying to boycott anybody unless you just really, really hate whatever Marvel and DC are doing. But I know I personally wasn't even reading comics until Diversity Comics came along, and I got back into them after I stopped reading them a few years ago. So me boycotting them won't even really do much. If there'd been a concerted effort to boycott not only the comics themselves, but also their advertisers, that would have maybe been a different story, but I feel like that ship has sailed. I think that backing these crowdfunding campaigns is important, but we also got to remember that it's not a long-term viable strategy, as poor Sporkman here, and I hope that this succeeds. I'll probably do a whole other video on Sporkman all by itself, but these things have diminishing returns. People just get tired of having one crowdfunding campaign after another thrown at them, and it's like, all those people are worthy that I showed. They're all worthy of support, but there's only so much monetary support to be had from any one person. And since they're all drawing from the same well for the most part, it makes it tough. I think, like I said, it's not my money. I wouldn't be the one taking the risk here. But if there was an actual ComicSgate publishing company, rather than Diversity Comics starting his Splotto Comics thing, and Ethan Van Sciver starting his all caps comics thing, I think that there should be some kind of dedicated publishing house, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. One that would publish not only DNC and EVS, but all of the people that want to fly under this hashtag, because then you could point to a track record of success. And right now, all we can say is that we've raised a lot of money for comics that haven't come out yet. And that's not much of a success. I wish I could say that I was, feeling upbeat and positive, but I'm really not right now. I wish that this had all been done smarter. I realized that it was just, it was a grassroots populist movement that had no real direction from the beginning, which was both, I think in the beginning it was a blessing, and now it's turned into a curse, because now there's actual money being allocated to things, and in my opinion, it's not being allocated as intelligently as it could be, but... yeah, so that is the state of ComicSgate as somebody who's been in this since the spring of last year, somebody who has watched it come and go, somebody who's seen all the scandals, somebody who has, been on Twitter. Can't say I've been a terribly active member, but I've been somebody that's definitely followed it since the beginning. And that's how I see where we are today, in terms of where we are going forward. I have no clue. I wish I had a better answer to that, but I don't. So, yeah, tell me if you agree with me. Tell me if you're gonna unsubscribe or something, because I was honest. Tell me if what to do. Tell me what this whole thing is about. Tell me where you think we're going. Tell me if I'm wrong. In any case, this is Unranked Chevron signing off.